Her Bak Egyptian Initiate, Pharaoh and Sage. The companions climbed the path that turns the foot of the peak. Slackening his pace, the sage put a hand on his disciple's shoulder. Do you remember the double event whose anniversary this pilgrimage commemorates? Chickpea's first ascent to the summit and the presentation of Her Bak to his king? Could I forget the moments that decided my path? Yet when I recall them, I feel shame congratulating myself on praiseworthy decisions. Who was really responsible for them? Wasn't it your light that lighted the road? Could I have refused? I often feel as if my will traps me and my decisions are an acceptance of which I am a helpless witness. The master stopped short. This gives you the right to speak of consciousness. Do you appreciate, Her Bak, the full meaning of this insight? The commonest error among men is to think that they are free, whereas they receive impulses of which they are blind slaves, because there is in them no observer to note what goes on. But this denies the validity of voluntary effort. The point is too important for juggling with words. Habit misleads you over the meaning of effort and will. Your will isn't constant because it is far from being single, but multiple, like the animal forces in you and the powers of your lower car. Each is capable of effort to achieve its desires. Each obeys 1,000 circumstances that derives from within you as well as from external conditions. The animal, too, makes an effort to achieve its desires. Your intelligent purposes, the rational intentions of your me, are not less relative than the motions of your animal will. To which of your wills do you attribute validity when you speak of voluntary effort? Her Bak hesitated, refusing evasion. I see only one that deserves to be called valid, he said at last. It is the will of my higher car, or of that in me that serves as a magnet to draw it to myself. He stood without flinching under the gaze that his master, deeply moved, bent on him. This shows that the magnet is at work, the sage responded. This is the observer. If it is he that chooses, gives orders, you can say, I act, I decide, I wish. Otherwise, you are driven. You do what you are told, without discerning the sources of your impulses from within or without. The magnet you call witness is my desire. The word is too vague and desire too subject to illusion. The witness is consciousness arising from relentless control of your various me's. Strictly, it is the awakening of that light in you which derives impulse, speech, action of their disguise and unmasks their real intention. The awakening is transitory, said Her Bak. When the light fades, one forgets it, at least for a time. The light can't go out, but man can sleep and not see it. That's why its awakening is the disciple's constant aim. When, through shock, a man is roused out of his torpidity, he may, before he falls back, see the difference between slavery to an anarchic complex of wills and the being able to coordinate them in full consciousness. And this gleam of consciousness, if you hold it in view, becomes a magnet to your divine car, your immortal witness, who will arouse in you the necessity, what you call desire, for his constant presence. Fortunate is the man who succeeds in making it his true will. Her Bak flushed. Master, he exclaimed, at such a moment as this, one can see the distance travelled. Between the unthinking enthusiasm of that first ascent to the peak and the the serene certainty of a decision that today is my own. And my impertinence before Pharaoh, I don't care to recall it. Was the sight of your king such a shock? And I had the presumption to judge him. You did? What came of it? It was that I was defeated to the point of losing consciousness and collapsing lifeless. Yes. And when I found the courage to look up, all my pride was in revolt at having given way. It melted when you spoke, and I had a strange vision. In Pharaoh, I saw the fulfillment of a power, the summit of a kingdom, its limit, its end. In the sage, I saw no end, no limit to his power. I looked at the king, I looked at my master. I no longer knew which was ruler. Make no mistake, said the sage. Pharaoh and sage are aspects of one power. Pharaoh is its right arm, the action of human will. The sage is the left arm, whose hand grasps the key of life. This is never openly declared, but your own destiny obliges me to tell you that a sage guides every pharaoh. If it is said sometimes that the king gives the plan and the canon of a temple, he takes counsel of those who know what is really designed. The sage passes on this legacy to one another. The plans are flexible, and there must be true knowledge if proportions and symbols are to be modified according to the real requirements of the epoch. The sage translates the laws, the king executes them. To the king belong outward pomp, human glory, earthly rule. To the sage, spiritual reality, inspiration, detachment from the world. The sage's life is a unity, whatever his apparent functions, in harmony with his role as teacher, for he is the slave of heaven. Pharaoh's life is a double one. In his royal life he is slave to the function or phase he stands for, symbol of a cosmic moment. He reveals it by his name, by the symbolic facts to which he must adapt the outer facts of his reign. In his personal life, he is human and independent, in as far as transmission of the royal blood and power isn't affected. Thus, his private destiny may touch the particular destiny of his people. If the king goes wrong, may the sage intervene? Her Bak asked. If what he did harmed our work, otherwise the sage has no right to interfere with the personal destiny from which the kingdom is due to suffer. But he may subsequently redress what was done wrong or modify a historical account if there was danger of its falsifying the symbolism. Is there no danger this might create misunderstandings? Doesn't misunderstanding arise if one man tries to usurp another man's function? Does your right hand dream of rebelling against your left? In a country organised in heaven's image, the two powers rest on universal harmony. Necessity unites them. It is the stable basis of authority. By what right does a man claim authority? An essential point. Knowledge is consciousness of reality. Reality is the sum of the laws that govern nature and of the causes from which they flow. Nothing in it is arbitrary. Ma'at is its perfect concordance. She is equity and truth. Authority is the power to impose thought and will on others. Personal thought, arbitrary will, are an abuse of it, but authority in accordance with Ma'at governs by reality. The king is its representative. He is action, and the man who acts is subject to personal impulse. Royal authority is the power of himself, a corporeal person who is the conscious embodiment of his ka and the ka of his kingdom. This will colour his actions. The sage is a channel of universal wisdom, neutral because impersonal. He establishes the relation between the particular destiny of king and kingdom and the destiny of the world. His consciousness is the king's light. His judgment isn't affected by the will to action. If he acts, it is in obedience to the king. His vision remains impersonal, without doctrine or prejudice. It is his knowledge that legitimizes the king's authority. It is a harmonious and impressive collaboration, said Her Bak, but is anything on earth indestructible? Everything changes because everything is in perpetual gestation. Wisdom would be at fault if it didn't foresee this. Troubles may come. A foreigner may usurp the throne. Anarchy may, for a time, upset the established order. What may happen seems incredible to a man who is unable to verify what I'm going to tell you. That even this is foreseen in the inspired picture in which the ancients wrote the development of various levels of the world. One day you will see this for yourself, as well as events to come. During such black times, the sage remains hidden, as it were, in an oasis, guarding the thread that disorder itself may conform with the order of its age. This explains why every invader carries on our traditions in spite of himself. And so it will be until the inevitable end of our mode of teaching. Didn't you say that time had come? Not yet. We are at the end of our work of revelation. We hasten to record the last proofs. Those who follow us will only be able to copy what has been said and repeat it until Egypt's last days. You are my master forever and master of masters, Her Bak cried. I am a link in the chain. Above us are the masters of principle, incarnations of wisdom, Imhotep and Amenhotep, son of Hapu. Her Bak showed astonishment. Amenhotep, called Hui. Was he so great a being? He was our second grand instructor. The first, the great master Imhotep, King Zoser's genius, came to bring an earlier age of wisdom to its conclusion. He gave the ground plan for the times and phases of the age then beginning, and those that would follow to the end of our history. This comprised its application to architectural proportions, to changes in the language and in names, as appropriate to each phase of the era. His knowledge of the human body and methods of wisdom warranted his reputation as a divine doctor. Amenhotep, son of Hapu, renewed and in his own time used what Imhotep passed on, inscribing in monuments the proportions and functions particular to the current phase and his king's symbolic role. This referred to phases past and to come, for it reached its accomplishment with the generation of the royal principle which ended the age of Ammon and precluded the coming revelation. But this great being's mission outlasted the merely temporal, for Imhotep and Amenhotep, son of Hapu, are forever the two pillars of our wisdom. Then wisdom, murmured Her Bak, is an edifice that defies time and man's inconstancy. I spoke not for men, but for a disciple of the masters, Her Bak replied in a low voice. The disciple is troubled by this perspective. The duration of this teaching, the presence to which it testifies. Are you afraid of it, Her Bak? This presence of which you become conscious today guarantees that reality leads you. Master, it measures the weakness of my animal self. How shall I master my violent impulses quickly enough never to stray from this road? It isn't the animal in you that will be your difficulty, the sage answered, but the human who is proud of his own thinking, the arrogant critic who would judge us, dissect us, our morality, our history, our religion. For us, reality is otherwise. He was silent, taking river and valley into his gaze, temple and village, all flooded with light that obliterated detail. Listen, Her Bak. Man's life is an apprenticeship of his consciousness as an organism made up in the cosmic image of consciousness in his harmonious connections with the cosmic organism and with the social organism of which he is a cell. That is our morality, our history, our religion. Social good is what brings peace to family and society. For the individual good is what leads him to possession of his car during life. The supreme good is the realization of his bar, giving birth to his own netter. Evil is all that hinders him in these purposes. Our program is to avert evil and promote good by all natural means, from the argument of the rod to education through symbols. Enhancement of consciousness is the aim and result, but getting it demands proof in experience. Obligation provokes revolt. Law gives sin power. Theory brings out the counter-argument. Confront a man with the consequences of what he does and he will work out his own morality. Death is the door into life conditioned by earthly existence, which a man could hardly forget. Funeral rites remind him of the survival of the cars of his own dead. People, nobles and kings know that they live by the netter. The mortal feeds on the grain of Renenutet, the living on divine symbols. Every man dies in Osiris and looks to him for the promise of resurrection. His sarcophagus is the newt that holds him in her two arms. Man communicates with his dead by means of funerary gifts, with his masters by libations in their name, with heaven by feasts that celebrate its dominion. Heaven and earth, gods and men, Pharaoh and kingdom are bound inseparably together by threads of Neith's weaving, and our real history is written by Seshat's reed. Thus, morality and religion are inherent in daily life, and history, the legend that attaches to a king, is but the necessary transition of symbols. This will save me from the temptation to analyse and dissect, said Her Bak. The sage gave a sigh. That won't be your only temptation. Men will say to you, what use is this science wrapped in so many mysteries? What point is there in writing the secrets of number and the entire cosmic mechanism on the ground if it's only shown to a few initiates? Of what avail is it to hide the key to relations and measures on the inside of walls and tombs supposed to be sealed forever? Her Bak's face clouded. Have you an answer? He asked. Yes, Her Bak. We have written it all down to the least symbol, even where the human eye may never see it, that our work may be done for its own sake in conformity with the creative law. It is the first title to nobility and the highest witness of truth, to work for the useless, without open reward, even moral, that the work may carry in itself the signature of the real, as completely as the plant conforms with the idea in its seed. And for nothing, for simple joy it shall be, even if no eye sees it, no ear hears it, that a perfect thing may be accomplished and stand forever. What an affirmation of the divine sense in man. What a victory over imbecile vanity. What a triumph over, what a triumph of the impersonal. Art without usefulness, love for love's sake without object. What adoration of what is, in contempt of what seems to be. Joy blazed in Her Bak's eyes, and the master knew his disciple. But he knew as well that the gem must be stripped of its gang. His voice grew severe. Among those who glimpse light, very few have the courage to love it in this absolute sense. Several learned men had died still putting the question, to what end? This proves that knowledge isn't necessarily wisdom. You, who will have to travel this road, bear in mind that it will be long before you come to the end of it, which is to have the power of what you know. Its length is measured by tests. You will be submitted to various temptations. After doubt will come that other danger, the danger of believing in the reality of monuments covered with silver and gold, instead of seeing in them nothing but sure evidence of wisdom, the reality of the word which is earth's soul and energy. We have learnt to know this power through ancestors whom God inspired, and we use it to put nature in man's service without doing violence. There have also been men who have put it to evil use. More of such black savants will seek to exploit it by negative and destructive means. How is this possible? Asked Her Bak. Fire can burn or give life. Truth is one. It can be approached by search into cause and creative power, which is the only way that opens the eyes of consciousness to the divine thought and the secrets of becoming. It can also be sought through matter and by violence, the way that leads to destruction. A curse on those who yield to this temptation. It is the most dangerous of all. For progress on this road flatters a man's pride so that he attributes the glory of his discoveries and his accursed science to his rational mind. While that other path means simplicity of heart and thought, acceptance of the fact that one is but a link in the becoming of the divine consciousness in humanity. It means the death of all personal vanity, murmured Her Bak. Clearly, that is indispensable condition of the revelation of spirit in nature. Today, said Her Bak, deeply moved, I know what acceptance means. They stood on a spur that dominates the valley of royal tombs like a ship's prow at the mouth of a river. At its extreme end, a strong breeze from the north completed the illusion that they were making a voyage. Her Bak filled his lungs with it, joyous, exalted. There is no sadness in this place, he said. It seemed to me we are travelling towards a new sunrise. Gravely the sage replied, it is indeed this spirit that you should envisage the future. At our feet, the last of our kings with a mission are buried. Their successors will only reflect them until the waves of an acquired rhythm die down. As for you, accustom yourself to the scale of successive ages, ages past and the age that will follow your own. You must get beyond consciousness of the present if you would escape from the habit of separating whole into parts. Look beyond valley and mountain for the reality in which three becomes one. Look beyond your time. A guide must see further than those he leads and understands the connection of things if he would know where humanity is going. Learn first the 5 ages of incarnation of the great Nectar. The unknowable one descended into heaven, that is the first. There he became the netters of heaven, that is the second. The netters of heaven came down on earth, that is the third, in which they created and became the kingdoms of nature. There will come an age when God, incarnating divine man, will be the revelation of the Creator. This will be the fourth. And finally, it will come about that men, in whom the great netter is conscious, will leave earth with its temples and gods to worship spirit in fusion with it and in truth. This will be the fifth. Could this be hastened without derogation from the law? That is the object of initiation, but it is only possible for the few. If cerebral intelligence is the obstacle, couldn't men be convinced of it? The sage watched her back, smiling. Then, with pitiless severity in looks and voice, he replied, "Are you strong enough, Her Bak, to hear what I'm going to say? You will never bring truth to men with argument, for cerebral consciousness, being Sethian, demands opposition and choice. How should it understand Ma'at consciousness, which is fusion without opposites? If you attain absolute being by fusion of your own with it, duality ceases. Intellectual comprehension ceases. What is the point, men ask, of seeking fusion in which you're no longer you, but that, and therefore don't know that in yourself? It is this disillusioning thought that prevents men of this world from engaging in the search. A new storm of doubt smote the neophyte. Head in hands, he struggled with it, now yielding, now refusing a rebellious impulse. At last, light came. He linked up the sequence of teachings once more, then looked his master in the face and said, "You have shown me the sole source of the world. You have proved that one who knows this source can overcome matter. You have opened to me the secret of the ages, which makes everything flourish in its time. You have taught me to think with the heart and to translate what I learn with my head. You have discussed the mystical mathematic of number, which solves insoluble problems in arithmetic and geometry. You have sketched the philosophy of our language structure, a guide for our whole life. You have put me on a road with which the netter's help will lead me to wisdom. Now you test me by showing the insanity of all effort, the vanity of purpose. It only remains for me to affirm my faith. I can't contradict you. You seem to be right. But against all reason I believe. I believe in all that you have taught me, in what is despite what it seems to be, in spirit that takes form in matter, in the divine seeds that await resurrection in man's heart, in the celestial kingdom towards which humanity tends, in the continuous passing on of wisdom throughout the ages, and my faith is a certainty that passes my understanding." The master gathered the first fruits of his labour. His voice, vibrant with controlled feeling, was less an answer than an echo. "And you will never understand it. Such faith is the intelligence of the heart. This is another world than the world of thought, and the two cannot be transposed. This is truth in relation to error. Error can isolate truth and make it appear, but it can never itself become truth. Truth and error aren't interchangeable. One can only negate negation and affirm what affirms itself. Faith willed or imposed isn't faith, but discipline of thought. Faith is the consciousness of the soul, acquired by identification with the object. and each acquisition is a victory over the me, which is wrong when it detaches itself from the object to understand it. When faith ceases to be mere belief, when it is no longer a matter of understanding, when it floods and envelopes us, it is the gift of light that possesses us. When the flood rises and swamps the banks, that is belief. When it overflows them, it is conviction. When it drowns everything in itself, it is faith with divine peace and becomes absolute certainty. By knowing, one reaches belief. By doing, one gains conviction. Through fusion comes faith. When you know, dare. Then will no longer to know or to will. Surrender your me to know self. This communion will be light and faith. Her Bak's face shone. I have regained my master and my joy. You never lost them, the sage replied. But pain awakens consciousness, which is faith. Rebirth is prepared in this way. When a man has outlived himself, when being simple, a child, poor in science, he has surpassed, rich in experience, he has proved. He draws to himself the nectar. Then the life in him is reborn and true science is his. Silence followed. The master tested Her Bak with his inner eye and at last spoke the decisive words. Her Bak, where are you going now? At your side, master, from summit to summit. No. First make your own way. My word is in you. You are furnished with all you need. Go alone and make use of what you have learnt. We have said all that a master may say to his disciple before he has proved his insight. Mut and Ammon have shaped the components of the egg. Go back up north to Heliopolis, Ra's chief sanctuary, and learn to be alone. Then you will come back here and ask Ammon for life. Her Bak knew the argument was useless. Eyes closed, he took the shock, listened, saw what the words meant, and in faith accepted. He regarded his master steadfastly, measured the distance between the one who knows and the one who begins, the inevitable now lighting his path. He asked in his last question, seeking a viaticum. Master, shall I be alone in reality? The man who seeks the very truth of truths is alone with himself. You will be alone among men like the kernel in fruit, but you will be one with those who belong to it. Become a living germ in it, and you will draw to yourself those who may become part of it likewise. And the others? If life rises in you, they will receive of you what all creatures may receive from the sun according to their hunger and capacity. Shall I be independent? You are dependent on what you can't do without. Your tyrants are the desires and necessities that impose their will on you, habits, sicknesses, needs and desires, whether material, affective, passional or spiritual. Learn to face them, adopt or refuse them. Have I always the liberty of choice? Natural man is subject to the netters, forces of nature, destiny, the stars, earth itself. Conscious of their influence, you will gain liberty. What is the measure of my responsibility? The measure of your consciousness. Is ignorance of the law and the means of knowledge an excuse for unconsciousness? Before what judge is it valid? An act and its intention are judge and judgment. Every intense desire has repercussions in the world where it is formed. Every action has its source in the latent disposition of its author. Its effects appear on the screen of fate. it may belong after. Are not the deeper motives of personal disposition written in each of us at birth? Showing the qualities of the car. Every quality has a good and a bad aspect. Evil consists in its egotistical and untimely use. Good is a use of it that conforms with harmony. One ought to be warned of this. The two causes of evil would seem to be ignorance and egoism. They are. Altruism is the mark of a superior being. Isn't such a one responsible for the ignorance of his inferiors? Her Bak, a bright light has dawned. Knowledge is vain that hasn't taken the measure of human suffering and communed with a man in his misery. It was consciousness of this that forged the masters' hearts and sustained their courage. Ignorance will not suffer attack without resisting. The intellectual is happy with the science of appearances. The passionate are afraid of losing their pleasure. The crowd distrusts all that lies outside its capacity. Your chief test then will be solitude. You will have to pursue your researches alone. I have given you the instruments. What you have learnt gives a language for what you will find. Nature will be your school, heaven your master. Create silence around you. Don't listen to men, their praises, sarcasms or reproaches. All is in yourself. Know your most inward self and look for what corresponds with it in nature. Then there will be communion. You will have knowledge and obscurity will cease. Work to confirm the truth of what you have heard and to prove that our philosophy is unassailable. Success will be the sign of the netter's blessing. Then faith will radiate from you. It will feed the hungry, and in this happiness, this victory, you will meet your last test. Her Bak knelt at the sage's feet. Master, he asked, will this be the temptation to ingratitude? No, ingratitude would affect not the master, but the ingrate, who would forthwith be turned from the road. This last test is the test of detachment even from the work, if you are to reach your own peak of perfection. How can a man work without getting attached? Nothing true is achieved unless light drives, and light in its own reward. One must learn to surrender all that brought it. The sage collected his thoughts. Power flowed from him, serene, virile, penetrating. He put his hands on the disciple's head, saying, O Her Bak, O Egypt, you are the temple which the netter of netters inhabits. Awaken him, then let the temple fall crashing.